Growing up in the late 90s, I was blessed to have access to the internet. So while I did miss out on watching Generation 1 as it aired, I was able to watch online recordings of Beast Wars. This show, as strange as it was one of the foundations of my love for Transformers. Now from the show came two of my favorite characters from the franchise, one of those being Tarantulas. Now let's set something straight right off the bat. I'm not the hugest fan of spiders. I don't have arachnophobia, but if the spider is bigger than, let's say my thumb, I normally don't mess with it. And tarantulas? Well, if you don't know, tarantulas like to burrow into the ground and lie in wait for anything to stroll by. Safe to say, I dislike tarantulas even more. And yet, Tarantulas is one of my all-time favorite characters from the franchise. So much so that I have his legacy figure and his Transmetal one on my shelf. In robot mode, of course. In the Beast Wars TV show, Tarantulas is pretty simple. He's a mad scientist who gets himself into trouble and serves as the show's backstabbing villain. There's not much to him, and that's just fine. He served his purpose, and there really wouldn't be a huge need for me to make a video on him. So, why are we here? Well, in the IDW continuity, Tarantulas' character is expanded upon in so many ways that I couldn't help but dive into his story. When we first see him appear on the page in Sins of the Wreckers #1, Tarantulas is but a shadow, a figure clouded in darkness and mystery, spreading misery where he goes, and toying with a captured Prowl. For some context, Prowl in this continuity is not the shining example of morality. He's often held up as one of the most hated Autobots, as his actions throughout the comics become more and more twisted and vile, and Tarantulas is a product of these twisted morals. In flashbacks, we see that Tarantulas was once Mesothelus, a scientist who created weapons and tools for the war under the direction of Prowl. Amongst these creations were three that we need to keep in mind. The Equatus, a supercomputer used in Autobot prisons to detect guilt among prisoners. Austeros, the first artificial Cybertronian. And the Noise Maze, a pocket dimension that drove its prisoners insane. Mesothelus believed that his relationship with Prowl was symbiotic. Prowl's mind would conjure twisted ideas, and Mesothelus would create them for him. In a similar way, he believed that the Cybertronian Civil War was a macrocosmic organism, which could be changed and evolved if the right actions were taken. To Mesothelus, no one actually mattered. The war and the world it took place in were just another experiment to be prodded and tested. This outlook led to a falling out between the two, however. Prowl, appalled by the creations of his muse, had Mesothelus pushed into the Noise Maze to never be seen again. In the aftermath of his betrayal, Prowl was also faced with Austeros. Now, Prowl was a morally ambiguous bot, but even he could not take the life of this newborn. And so, he recruited the artificial life form into the Autobot faction, where he soon became known as Springer. Mesothelus was able to escape the Noise Maze, but not after centuries of being stranded in it alone. After freeing himself, he went on to study Earth's wildlife and created Chimericon technology, which allows Cybertronians to utilize biomass disguises, essentially bringing actual beast forms into the series, as well as mass-shifting abilities. All this to say, he now turned into an actual tarantula with biological parts. Years after the war, Prowl had become a wanted fugitive for the war crimes that he had committed, and so Mesothelus began his plan to rekindle their symbiotic relationship. The now captured Prowl is face to face with his old partner in crime, but no longer is he Mesothelus. He is now Tarantulas. Tarantulas wants only one thing: to pick up where things were left off, to restart the cycle of desperate needs and sickly inventions. He wants to create again what Prowl dreamt up in the times of war. Tarantulas even mocks Prowl, saying that while he himself may have created such vile inventions like the Equatus, it was Prowl who envisioned them in the first place. The evil of this war was a road traveled by two. Tarantulas could only exist with Prowl, not alone. I want to take a quick break here and say that this story has so much more to it. For the sake of this video, I'm giving you the cliff notes of the Wreckers saga. I highly suggest you go and read the full trilogy to understand all the different aspects that are going on at the same time as this story. After Prowl is rescued from the Noise Maze by the Wreckers, Tarantulas is thought to have been killed, but rather he is able to shrink himself down so small that he is undetected by others. In Requiem of the Wreckers, Tarantulas returns, now working with Overlord to complete the construction of the Time Maze, essentially a time machine. Tarantulas wants to use this machine to create infinite timelines to experiment with, while Overlord wants to use it to simply go back in time and kill Megatron. Both of these monsters resist each other's intentions until Springer arrives, wherein Tarantulas stops his fighting in order to appeal to his son. Overlord, however, having no care for such emotion, takes advantage of this moment and shoots Tarantulas in the back of the head. Now I know what you're thinking. Here comes the part of the video where Delta is going to say that Tarantulas is a tragic villain, someone who only exists because of the cruelty of others, and in turn, he's actually a victim. And that theory is wrong. Tarantulas is not a victim, per se. He's not a tragic villain who deserves better. He is, in fact, a monster. A sadistic creature who revels in the torture and injustice that the Cybertronian Civil War brought with it. He does not view the world as full of people, but rather, as we said earlier, he sees it as an organism to be prodded and crushed into a new shape. His eventual creation of the Time Maze proves that in his spark all he wants is to experiment on the lives of others. But the arrival of Springer also shows us that while Tarantulas is a monster and may have very few redeeming qualities, he still is a father. In his dying moments, Tarantulas is not forgiven for his crimes, nor is he told that he is loved by his creation. Rather, Tarantulas is given the time to bear his spark, to speak on what could have been.
Springer!
Tarantulas.
You never knew me, Springer, but I found a way to know you. To be near you after so long apart. I spent time with you and the girl when you escaped the maze. I came to your home and made myself so small as to not be in your way. And though I could never talk to you, I took comfort in being close to you and knowing that you were good. I never meant for you to be left alone.
I was never alone. I always had someone.
God, it was for the best that you were taken from me. I think your life would have been worse, but I fear mine would have been better. Maybe then it would have occurred to me that instead of unleashing so much harm, so much chaos on the specimen, I leave behind something good, Master Rose.
Goodbye, Mesothulis.
Tarantulas dies knowing that his actions have brought one good thing into the world. As he so expertly says, "It was for the best that you were taken from me, I think. Your life would have been worse, but I fear mine would have been better." Tarantulas knows that he's not a tragic hero. He understands his place in the macrocosmic organism he calls the universe. He is nothing but a speck in the grand design far beyond him. His partnership with Prowl proved to be devastating to many, but there was another symbiotic relationship that turned out for the better. Springer could have only existed if Tarantulas did as well. While one brought forth horror and destruction, the other brought peace and justice. Tarantulas, at the end of the day, at the end of his life, is nothing but a monster. And yet, at the same time, he's also a father.